Maria, thank you so much for being here with us this year. Everyone at Endwell is just so honored that you are going to be part of this with us. You and I met working on a grief project, but we both come to this place and this work from really personal places. I lost both of my parents in adolescence. You come from a family notorious for going through a lot of loss. I would love for you to start by just telling us a little bit about your personal experience of grief.
I'm interested where you said both of us have come to grief in a personal way. And I think really everybody comes to grief in a personal way. And what I have learned throughout my life is that everybody is grieving in some personal way. And they could be grieving big public things, like my family went through big public grieving experiences where people came up to us a lot. I've learned that people grieve very privately and nobody really talks to them about their grief, and they don't really talk about their grief. And I noticed that in my own family, nobody was really talking in the family about grief. The whole world was talking about them, but we weren't talking about them. We were just carrying on. And I think when you carry on without grieving, you get into trouble down the road. So I wrote a book called What's Heaven to really talk to my children about grief, because I think in many ways we're all carrying around that small child inside of us. It has led me to kind of writing about grief, talking about grief, interviewing people about their grief. Every single human being is struggling with grief, whether they know it or not.
You once said that we are a grief illiterate nation,
Yeah.
which I think builds upon what you were just saying about how your family dealt with it, how a lot of people do put their grief away. Do you think that's changing? Do you think that's still true? If not, what needs to happen there?
I think we've made progress maybe since I made that statement, but I think we have a long way to go. We don't have signals or touch points to know if someone in front of us is struggling or grieving. We don't have a culture, I think, that allows people time. And we go, so sorry, are you coming back to work tomorrow? We kind of use our own metrics, right, to assign, oh, well, it's just a dog, get over it. Oh, well, you haven't seen that sibling in a long time. Is it really that big of a deal? The more we have those intimate conversations, the more we're willing to listen and really probe into someone else's experience, and then to hold them as they share their experience, and to understand that it might keep coming up. It might keep coming back. Be patient with people's grief journeys, because for some, it's short and brief, and for others, it's years or decades.
Absolutely. There are so many types of grief, so many things that we grieve. How can we help people feel more of that permission? How can we help them honor the grief that they have for unemployment, for losing their, summer plans, or kids not being in school?
I think by just showing up in someone's life and being willing to hold space for them when they kind of tiptoe around their grief, and then when they may let it go. They need someone to listen to them and assure them that they're going to be okay, or it's okay. Maybe it's not okay today. I think so many people feel alone, not just with their grief, but just alone, period. The pandemic has kept people in their homes, isolated from one another, secluded, alone with their thoughts, alone with their experiences. They've lost jobs, right? They've lost dreams, as you said. And people are overwhelmed and they're grieving, kind of all day long, and they don't really have an outlet for it. So I think being a good friend, listening, asking, how are you really? Sometimes I think people say that and they just hope you'll say fine and move along, but really being okay with holding that and then checking in on people. I haven't talked to anybody, I would say, Claire, who isn't struggling right now. At all ends of the economic spectrum, across the gender spectrum, across the age spectrum, who isn't saying like, whoa, what is going on?
It's true. It's amazing. One of the things that I have observed and found personally to be A really big aspect of grief is that lonely feeling. When I remember when my mother died when I was 18, I felt like I was the only person in the world who had gone through a loss like that. Obviously, I wasn't. This feels different because we are all grieving at the same time.
I'm glad to hear you say that you think people are all grieving, because I think a lot of people think, well, gosh, everybody's just angry.
When you peel up the lid of anger, underneath it is almost always sadness or fear, right? So those are aspects of grief as well.
And if you were to tell them, well, I think you're actually grieving, they might say, no, I'm not. I'm just mad at my boss because they laid me off, or I'm mad at my friend because they haven't kept whatever. As I always say to my kid, let's talk about the thing below the thing below the thing. So educating people about how it's all connected, I think, is part of the work of grief therapists like yourself.
Maria, another interesting thing that has been coming up this year is this term of grief shaming. Have you heard of this?
Well, I've heard of it, and I think we're a shaming culture in so many ways. So grief shaming, success shaming, body shaming, financial shaming. I mean, we're just like shaming all over the place, right? Whenever somebody's doing that, what they're doing to themselves is usually 10 times worse. And I think people do that, right, because they're afraid or they want to feel better about their own experience. Who are we to judge that relationship? Who are we to judge that experience? We can't impose our experience onto someone else. We can't impose our timetable onto someone else. To be understanding is, I think, the goal for all of us, right? I think the world is in upheaval. And so perhaps it's the best time to talk about personal upheaval alongside public upheaval.
Do you think there's ever such a thing as rushing into healing and rushing into finding meaning in something too quickly?
Yeah, I think because we're inundated with, try to find the silver lining, try to find the lesson, right? And then if we don't take the time, the universe kind of teaches us the lesson again and again and again until we learn.
And everybody, like you said earlier, has their own timeline with grief.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who's going through a big loss for the very first time?
I always, if I see somebody or I know someone's going through something, I always try to reach out. I'll often say, like, I don't have the right words, or perhaps even words don't work. And I always say to my kids, just say you don't know what to say. But always try to reach out, always try to send a note, because the person on the other end of it, I've yet to meet someone who didn't appreciate when someone reached out or someone tried.
Absolutely. I always advise people too to continue reaching out beyond those first few months. There's always so much activity in the first few months. Everybody's there with casseroles and, things. And then that drops off. And that's often when a lot of the real grief kind of comes on as well.
Yeah, that's true. The first year, first anniversaries, first birthdays, first Christmases. Both my parents died in the last decade. And I find the holidays, Thanksgiving, it triggers, I used to always go home. So I think we have to be super gentle to people during the holidays because many people find themselves alone. Their grief bubbles up. I have found that the holidays are challenging for a lot of people. I often find them challenging for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you stay connected to the people that you've lost?
Through prayer. I'm, raised Catholic. I have a deep faith that I'm here for a specific reason. I think about the people that I've lost and think of them kind of being together. That is comforting for me. So I think everybody has to find their own way.
That's beautiful. In terms of getting to the other side of this place that we are all in, what is giving you strength and hope right now?
Every day I get up and say, like, okay, I'm grateful for this day. I'm grateful that my feet touch the floor. I'm going to do something with this day. It gives me hope to every day connect with my kids, with people that I work with, to stay on my mission. That gives me hope.
So, Maria, I want to talk about kids and grief. I have 3 young kids at home. You have adult children, but our kids are grieving just as much as we are right now. And I don't think that they have as many capacities to understand it in the ways that we do. How can we help kids think about grief and address their own grief?
Well, I'm sure, so many kids, they miss their friends, they miss their schools, they miss their routine, they miss their play dates, their soccer teams, whatever it was they were into has really been stripped away from them. And I think, it's kind of one more thing for parents to teach about. I have so much empathy for so many parents who are trying to, parent, teach, provide, care for aging parents. It's all overwhelming. It's so much, right? And so I think, but this is one more thing to talk about. Like, are you sad that you can't see your friends? How does that make you feel? I think talking about feelings, being able to hold your children's feelings instead of saying, well, everybody's in the same boat, just we all got to get over it. I think that kind of thing diminishes people's feelings and makes them feel like you can't talk about it, right?
I'm working from home with 3 little kids during a pandemic, and it is so hard. How do I get through this? What do I hold on to here?
Well, I think you hold on to yourself, right? You hold on to the family that you've created. You hold on to the belief that you will get through this. Is it hard? Absolutely. As I say to my kids, everything's hard. Everything's hard. And you get through it. And you will look back and you will say, that's why I got through it. That's why I led like that. I was made for this. We're made for this moment. And each moment that we encounter, I think if we believe we are made for this moment and that we have everything we need already within us.
Oh, thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all the work you've done for the Sunday paper over the years and used your voice to educate us about grief in such a loving and compassionate way.
Thank you. Likewise, we have to keep talking about grief, and I'm just so grateful to you for all the work that you do in that space and all the other places that you do as well. Thank you so much.